All right, welcome back to the Wholesome Financials Podcast. My name is Austin.
Susie.
And we are Wholesome Financials. We talk about business funding, building relationships with major banks, and LLC formation. Our mission is to help purpose-driven entrepreneurs scale and grow their businesses using the power of personal credit. So in this episode, we'll talk about how to set up your LLC for business funding. And in this video, you'll learn which LLC names will get you denied for business funding, business loans, credit lines, and how to proactively set up your business to ethically avoid denial and increase fundability. What do you think about that?
Man, that's a lot right there.
That's a lot. I'm excited. And if you stay tuned in this episode, you will dive in. If you are listening to this on Spotify, thank you. This is great. Thank you for supporting. Just give us a rate or let us know what you think about this podcast. You can find this on YouTube at youtube.com/@Wholesome Financials. And if you search us on all of our social medias, the one we're the most active on is Instagram and TikTok. That is Wholesome_Financials. So let's dive into it. I thought we'd start with an interesting statistic. So according to Discara 2020 is a statistic research website. They had some key findings, and they said of all the small businesses, 42% of small businesses apply to a loan from a big major bank. That would be Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, so on and so forth. So 42% of small businesses are actively looking for capital for their business, which I thought was interesting. But the Fed Small Business reports a 68% approval rate in 2022. So 6 out of 10 businesses are approved for some type of loan for their business. 4 out of 10 businesses are not approved. And this is only less than half of the businesses that are even seeking capital to grow and scale their business to the next level, which is interesting. And so in this episode, we're talking about one key factor when it comes to setting up your business, your limited liability corporation, to avoid being denied funding and increase your fundability. And that is names, picking the name for your LLC. So where should we start?
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important thing I can always tell people is picking the right name, because the right name could either make or break you when it comes to getting any type of funding. So a good rule of thumb is to always go for very generic names that don't really pinpoint to any particular industry. So off the top of your head, can you give an example of some high risk and maybe low risk names?
Yeah, and before we do that, let's give the listeners and the viewers a structure of what this episode is going to cover. So we're going to cover within the names, picking high risk and low risk names. What else are some other topics regarding LLC names we're going to go over that they can expect in this episode?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the difference between an LLC name and then a DBA name under that LLC name.
Okay.
We're also going to be talking about states that generally require you to completely identify your business, whether it's a corporation or an LLC.
Okay.
And then also we're going to be talking about the difference between an LLC and a foreign entity, and then conducting.
Go ahead. How to search for your name and different fees regarding different states, right? Those are the last two?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, great. So now everyone has an idea of expectations for this episode. Let's dive into it. So you were talking about high risk versus low risk. And what was the question you asked me earlier?
I asked, can you give the people some examples of a high risk name that they should probably avoid and a very neutral generic name that they should use?
Okay. So an example of a high risk name would probably be Austin's Real Estate or LLC or Sanford Trucking LLC, or maybe AJ Restaurants LTD. All those are probably high risk, right?
Yeah, just because they're considered high risk industries, it's industries that have a lot of overhead, which to the bank, it looks like you're not going to be able to pay them back. So they're more cautious in lending you money that way. But yeah, those are great examples of high risk, but maybe also give some examples of neutral low risk names so that people could understand like the difference.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my favorite one is, and I might be biased, which is our LLC name, Wholesome Enterprises LLC. I think that's pretty generic. Can you let the viewers know why that one is low risk though? Why is generic equal low risk?
Yeah, just because it doesn't really pinpoint to any particular industry. So off the bat, before the bank even, gets to know you and your business a little bit more, they don't really know what your business is categorized in if you have a very generic name. So for example, our business name is called Wholesome Enterprise. So we are a financial consulting company, but on paper, we're just Wholesome Enterprise.
Yeah. I think it's huge. And a lot of business owners, new business owners, miss this. Even business owners that have been in business for a while.
Yeah.
I would consider, even if you have a business, maybe you already started your business and, it's been running for a couple of years, you're cash flowing, but you need more capital. But your business, you're working in a high risk industry and you want funding, but you're nervous that the bank will not approve you because the name of the industry that you're in is in your LLC name, like Austin's Realty or Smith Realty, right?
Yeah.
I would recommend to create an LLC, a new LLC, just as a straw man, specifically for funding and making it low risk so that you can avoid those immediate denials and you can get that funding for your business. And so, managing risk to banks is crucial. It's huge. And banks are looking because their whole job is to make sure they're giving out loans to clients that can pay them back. And one easy way to get disqualified before you actually even get into the bank is to be on that no lend list or that low lend list, which would be a high risk industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, the most important thing, again, is picking that right name, because if you get that right, I think everything else will just go smoothly from there. I
agree. I couldn't agree more. And so with that said, let's move into the next topic. It kind of flows into it. Like I mentioned, if you're here and you're listening to us, you're like, well, what's that enterprise thing that you just said? Because I thought the name of your business was Wholesome Financials. Well, Wholesome Financials is a DBA for us.
Yeah.
And our actual name on our LLC is Wholesome Enterprises. And I think that's a great segue into the next part of this talk, this training, is the difference between the name of your LLC and a DBA. So maybe you can kick us off there.
Yeah. So you can only have one LLC name, right? Like I'll put our company as an example. We're Wholesome Enterprise LLC, but under that LLC, you can have multiple DBA names, right? So our DBA name for our financial consulting company is Wholesome Financials. If we wanted to add another segue it to our business, we could do another DBA. If we want to get into trucking, we could do Wholesome Trucking. So there isn't a limit as to how many DBAs you can have under an LLC, but you can only have one LLC. So I think that's something really important.
Yeah, that's clutch. Don't miss this. Say it one more time. How many DBA names can you have under an LLC?
Unlimited.
It makes the most sense to use a generic name for your LLC because you can always make a different new DBA for that LLC. It's literally unlimited, which I think that's something that most people don't understand. They don't really know. So that's huge. So a DBA, if you're unfamiliar, a DBA stands for doing business as. And so our business is called Wholesome Enterprises LLC on paper, but we have a DBA. We're doing business as Wholesome Financials. And so just like my wife Susie said, if you're trying to open up another business, you can do business as another name as well, which is a DBA. What's also another term people use for DBAs?
Yeah, another name. Sorry, another name is fictitious name. A fictitious name is also known as a DBA. So same thing, different words.
Yeah. And so what's the purpose? And so obviously you have your LLC name and you have your fictitious business name, right? It's fictitious. It's not real. It's not your actual business name. It's just how you're operating business. But what's the purpose of having a DBA or a fictitious business name, especially in the eyes of the law or for consumers?
Yeah. So again, very simple terms. It's basically to notify the public that you're doing business in another name other than the legal LLC name.
Gotcha.
So in simple terms, that's what it comes down to.
Got you. So just clear communication for the public. And so if you're trying to figure out what is this thing, maybe I'm new to it, maybe you're a new business owner, you have a great idea, but you're trying to structure correctly, make your LLC generic as a low risk name that goes with also a low risk NAICS code. We'll talk about that in future videos. And then the next step would be to just open up a DBA for the business or the industry that you are trying to get into. And I think that's the best way to go about it. I think it's the best way to do it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Also, you can create multiple LLCs and then also have multiple DBAs under them. So there isn't a set number that you have to have. The possibilities are endless. So I just want to make sure that, people understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's huge. So let's talk about LLC. So our name isn't just Wholesome Enterprises. There's 3 letters at the end of it, right? That abbreviates Limited Liability Corporation. But what is that for? Like, why is that on the name of the LLC?
Yeah, so some states actually require you to have that abbreviation or even just a full spelling of the word limited liability company. So that way they can identify what type of company you have, right? So if you have a corporation, they want you to have that word corporation at the end. Now, not every state requires it. So you do have to double check with the state that you're looking to incorporate in.
Yeah. And you can kind of choose. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. It's just, like you said, it's for the state to be able to identify quickly.
Yep.
What is your business structure? Are you an S Corp? Are you a limited liability corporation? What is it? If you don't put it on there, then it'd be kind of hard for them to identify what your business is, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Let's see. I'm actually going to look up right now what states don't require an LLC to be put at the end of your business name. Because maybe you don't want that LLC. Maybe it's just, an eyesore. There are a couple of states that pop up, but let's see. Yeah, most states do require the LLC designation be included in the name of the company that's registered. And so if there isn't a state, if there is a state that doesn't require it, it's very few and far between. So
exactly.
To be safe, just put it at the end of your business, right? So you can make sure that you don't get denied, you don't slow down the process of getting your business established.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off of that, I don't think they'll let you file your articles of incorporation if you don't have that LLC or limited liability company abbreviation or name on the actual business name. So you can actually proceed to file and pay the fee if you don't actually have it. So that's another dead giveaway if your state actually requires it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about foreign entities. This is something that most people may not be aware of, or maybe they are, but they're not really sure how they work or the point or maybe the difference. Also known as maybe a foreign subsidiary. And so some of the pros and cons of a foreign entity is just being able to change the way that you market and how you move from state to state. Maybe you're not registered in certain states, but just in general, let's start with what's the difference between an LLC and a foreign entity, just to give a baseline understanding for the audience.
Yeah, so an LLC is basically just a limited liability company that you structured and organized in the state that you live in or the state where you reside in, right? So for us, we're in California. So the LLC is, structured in California. So that's pretty much the difference from an LLC and a foreign entity. A foreign entity is basically a company that you've established in another state. So it's pretty much the same company, but you've registered in another state. And I think that's key when it comes to getting business funding. So maybe you can go into a little bit more detail as to why that's so important, having foreign entities in different states to access more funding.
Yeah, if you have a foreign entity in another state, well, number one, depending on where you're getting funding from, you have to show some type of presence in that state, in that market, to qualify. And so for us, we have multiple states and multiple LLCs in multiple states. And so that opens us up for funding in multiple states. And this isn't really huge for the major banks, but it is really big for the regional banks, right? There are major banks that are present in every state, and they still want to see that you're planted in that state, but especially regional banks. I'm trying to think of some regional banks off the top of my head.
PNC, Truist, KeyBank. Those are banks that go, hey, this is a regional bank, so you need to be from this region. And so making sure that you're properly set up and that you're registered there is huge so that you don't get denied for funding. Is there anything you would add to that? Yeah, so just a quick example. So, for example, like our LLC is structured in California, but we have a foreign entity in the state of Florida, A, because we have family there, and B, we wanted to access the banks that are only available in that state, right? Yes. Like Truist, like KeyBank, because they also give high limits. But if my business isn't incorporated in Florida, then I can't access that money, right? So it is in our best interest to have all these multiple foreign entities so we can access more funding. Yeah.
And some of the downsides, if you don't actually properly file for a foreign entity, depending on where you're doing business, obviously one of the greatest draws of having a limited liability corporation is to have liability between you and your business, to have limited liability.
Exactly.
To remove all of that liability from you. If you're not registered in the state that you're operating in, you might be unable to file lawsuits in that state, which you might need to have a foreign qualification. You might incur fines depending on the state that you're trying to operate in, or that you are operating in. Maybe even back taxes for the time period where you conducted business and you weren't legally registered there. And last but not least, like interest can be applied on top of your filing in the state that you should have qualified. And so if you are trying to set up your LLC and you're trying to build your business, to get prepared for business funding and just to make sure you're structured properly, but you're not really sure how to start, you haven't had the skills, and this is something that you've not studied out, we highly recommend clicking the link at the bottom of, clicking the link in our bio, maybe at the bottom of this podcast, wherever you're watching it, around this video or this audio, and working with us. This is something that we take pride in, that we enjoy, helping new business owners or business owners that are trying to expand into new markets, set up their LLC properly, their DBAs properly, their foreign entities properly. And so it's something that we do and we take pride in. I highly recommend working with someone because the amount of time and the headache it would take to untangle maybe a wrong or improperly filed LLC, depending on the company or depending on the state that you registered in, could be a headache and a nightmare and a half, and could really impede you starting your business, impede that cash flow, and that could be catastrophic depending on what your timeline is. And so we highly recommend that you work with us. Take a look at some of the products that we offer. Let's do a consulting call because we'd love to help you get set up. So it's really, really huge. So I realized that, so what we covered so far, low risk name. Mm-hmm. We also covered making sure that, you know, we know the difference between a DBA and then the name of it, the name of our LLC, where we're registering our LLC, foreign entities versus just the regular LLC. What's next?
Yeah. So I think something that most people don't do is to do a name search before you go and apply to get the business, because you might fall in love with a name and then you find out that that name is actually already taken. You might have already purchased a domain, a business email. And so I think, once you have an idea of the business name that you want to go for, I think it's a good idea to go and do a name search. Okay. So every state has what it's called a Secretary of State. Yes. If you go on your state's Secretary of State, Florida, Virginia, wherever you live, you can do a name search and it'll literally tell you if that name is taken. So I think that's so key, because you're going to avoid having to spend all this extra money. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. A lot of people think the first thing I need to do is buy the domain, like you mentioned, get the IG handle going. And I think all those things are great and necessary. But if we're talking about the name of your LLC, not necessarily your DBA, for your DBA, I think it's great to snatch those things up. But for the name of your LLC, the first thing you have to make sure you have is the actual name of the LLC, because it makes no sense. But I think the workaround is just like, okay, well, the name is taken. Maybe the DBA, maybe that's available. So let me try that as well. But you also have to check and see that as well if that's available. So, I 110% agree. It's something that people overlook. They get T-shirts made, they get mugs made, they get so excited, and they're introducing themselves. They got business cards. They've updated their LinkedIn profile, whatever the case may be. And truthfully, you were never properly set up in the beginning. So, small step, critical, very overlooked.
Yeah, something I almost forgot to mention, but some states also have a feature where you can reserve a business name. So maybe you're somebody who's not really ready to get started with the whole process of setting up an LLC, but you really, really love this name. It's what you've been thinking about for the past 2-3 years. Well, you can actually go and reserve the name. I believe you pay a small fee. It also depends on each state. And that way, once you are ready to get started and complete the whole process, that name will be there for you. So another great tip for you guys.
Yeah, like you mentioned, a bunch of different states have reservation fees. I know for the state of Texas, it's about $40. Texas Secretary of State. You can reserve your name for $40 if you're like, what, I know I want this name, but I'm not ready to mobilize yet. And it varies from state to state, but that is something that could be useful if maybe that's something that you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, like you hit it on the nail. You can do a really quick Google search and look at the fee of what it is to reserve a name. And that might be something that you might want to look into, especially if you're not really ready to, get started with the whole process just yet.
Absolutely. And with that said, going to transition to I think it's just the final point that we were going to go over this episode. Mm-hmm. Speaking of fees and prices, how much it actually costs to open up your LLC. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so each state has its own fee to open up an LLC. Some states are more expensive. Some states are really cheap. So off the top of my head, I know that Texas is probably one of the most expensive ones out there. And it's $300 to incorporate your LLC, right? Now, Florida is $125. California, I believe, is between $75 to $80. So do your due diligence and find out exactly how much you're going to have to, invest, because it is an investment, before you actually get started. So you're not startled with the amount of money you might have to spend up front. Also, I think you might want to touch on the annual fees. Some of these states also have annual fees to keep the business active.
Yeah. So one state that comes to mind, which I don't understand why people open up. Well, I mean, I get it. Like if you live there, but outside of it, some states it does not make sense to have your business registered there. And one is Massachusetts. Why? I don't know. It's a initial cost of $500 to file your LLC, and an ongoing cost of $500 annually to keep your LLC going. For California, there's an $800 biannual cost for your LLC. Some people say, "Oh, that's for bigger companies." I'm like, no. From what we've seen, it's $800 for annual franchise. which is just astronomical. And then there's another one. I believe it might be. I know we mentioned Texas. There's another
Tennessee, I believe.
Tennessee is the state.
Yeah.
Tennessee, it's $300 to file and also $300 annually. And so these are things that, you know, this isn't based off of your revenue. This isn't based off of your cash flow, your P&Ls. This is just what it costs to have an LLC in this state. Something to keep in mind if you're a new business owner and you're like, okay, I'm just setting my business, but we're not really going to get rock and roll until months down the line. Do know that they are going to want the fee for this the next annual cycle. And all of them have different payment dates, but this is something that, you know, even for California, like, you know, whether you've made money or not, they want that $800. Tennessee wants the $300. Massachusetts wants those $500. And so keeping track of those annual fees is something that, in planning for those annual fees, I think is critical to make sure that it doesn't impede or hurt your cash flow, so that you can stay in the black and keep moving forward, reaching those goals and getting to the next level to scale and grow your business. Yeah,
I think that was a beautiful way to end it. You did a good job.
Thanks, babe. Again, if you're interested in trying to set up your LLC, maybe you've continued to get denied by banks, and this is one of the reasons, and you didn't really know why, because the bank isn't necessarily going to tell you exactly why you got denied. We can tell you for sure this is something that gets clients denied all the time, or if they do access any type of funding, whether it be a line of credit or a loan, it's a very, very small amount. If you want to learn more about how to set up your business so it's fundable, shoot us a message or click the link in our bio to set up a call, and we would love to audit your business or help you from scratch build a corporation so that it completely be fundable and you can get access to high limits, specifically high limit credit cards, business credit cards from major banks and regional banks, so that you can get anywhere from $50,000 to $200,000 of funding to scale and grow your business. And then from there, you build your business credit, and then it just keeps going and it becomes a domino effect. So work with us. We appreciate you checking out this episode. Any parting words before we go?
No, I think appreciative of people watching, listening to us. It means a lot to us, and we're always open to questions, comments, things we could improve on. We love to get any type of feedback from you guys. So again, thank you so much for watching, listening to us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Follow us. Give us a follow on TikTok and Instagram if you're interested in this type of content long term, as well as YouTube. We have a lot of trainings coming out, and we'll be giving out a lot of free game, a lot of educational resources to help purpose-driven entrepreneurs scale and grow their business using the power of credit, leveraging other people's money, leveraging the banks. And so till then, we appreciate you joining the podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace be with you, and shalom.